Okay, so we begin our discussion of asset management ratios in our previous class, and we did not finish it. We said that asset management ratios help us understand how well we use our assets in generating of our sales or earnings. And there are two groups. We discussed them. One of them is turnover ratios. So it counts the number of turns that our asset turns itself over into something. It may be sales or it may be cost of goods sold, but it kind of converts itself over into something. We use this picture where I showed the overall capital turnover. So how it works. First we have the idea, then we take the idea, we use our equity, and we have debt, and then we buy assets, then we use assets to produce from raw materials through production finished goods, FG, and then we sell these goods, we create accounts receivable, then accounts receivable are paid, and we generate sales. So all of our assets eventually convert themselves, accounts receivable convert themselves into sales, finished goods convert themselves into sales, work in progress, raw materials, and all of our assets, accounts receivable, and also accounts payable. So there is one ratio we didn't talk about, and it's called capital turnover. So let's talk about that. 2.7. 2.7. Well, in fact, I will put it like this. So 2.7 capital turnover. Capital turnover. So the idea of capital turnover can be shown on this picture. So in this context, we focus on our capital, which is our equity and debt. So we want to see how well we can convert our capital over into sales. So that's where this relationship comes from. Let me see if yes. So the capital turnover ratio is connected with our ability to turn equity and debt over into sales. So in this case, CT, capital turnover, equals our net sales divided by, like we know in math right now, our debt plus our equity. Okay? Or NS divided by D plus E. Okay, so now we should calculate this ratio. We need to think, okay, where do we find net sales? In which financial statements? In English, it is income statement. So we need to go to the income statement to find this information. And debt and equity can be found where? In which statement? Balance sheet. Yes, the balance sheet. Okay, let's go. Let's find these numbers in our statements. Income statement. Here we have net sales. How much is net sales? $1,000. Now let's look for equity and debt. With equity, it's simple. We have equity of 600, right? With that, there is one but here. Because when we talk about debt, we talk about interest-bearing debt, only those liabilities for which we have to pay something. In our case, interest-bearing debt, it's all long-term loans over here. It has our long-term bonds, notes, and debt, because see, they're interest-bearing, 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 and only short-term debt, because it's interest-bearing. Accounts payable do not count, because they are not interest-bearing. Interest-bearing – это те, за которые надо платить проценты. Okay, so in this case, we take long-term bank loans, long-term bonds, it's 200, 150 plus 50, and only short-term debt, which is 150. Yes? We have this 150, these are long-term bank loans, 50 is our long-term bonds, they comprise the 200. But out of the 300 of short-term liabilities, we need only 150, so we take this. 150, 50, and 150. So how much is it going to be? Practice math. Yes, 150 plus 50 plus 150 is 350. So let us put it in our calculation. So net sales is how much? 1,000 divided by debt was 150. Equity was 600. Yes. Then hold on. I confused something. Yeah, there is my bad over here. Yes, 350. Yes, 350 and 600. Yes. Confusion, little confusion, but we found it out. So it is 350. 350 plus 600. So that gives us 1,000 divided by 950, and that is, well, we need help here. 1,000 by 950. 1.05. Okay. So let's remember, it's been 2 classes before. What does it mean, 1.05, if we look at the previous examples? It means that we are able to turn our capital over into sales 1.05 times in one year, in our case. In one period, but this is 1 year. Okay? So, so this is our capital turnover. If I try, well, theoretically, I can even calculate the days in capital turnover to see how many days it's going to take, but this ratio was not used. But if I divide 365, divide by 1.5, I will get this number. Okay? Yeah. Well, in this case, I say you need to compare to industry average. Industry average. You need somebody as an example. And if it's higher than the industry average, it is good. If it's lower than the industry average, it's not so good, it's bad. So it means it takes a long time for you to convert your capital over into sales. So if you compare it to the industry average and then you watch the dynamics. Or I can do the capital turnover is more than capital turnover for industry average. That's a smile. If the capital turnover of the firm is less than capital turnover of the industry average, that's not so good. If it's growing, it's good. If it's going down, it's not so good. So because we want to be effective, effective means faster, faster, faster. Okay, any questions so far? Okay, so, well, in fact, let me change it a little bit to here, because I want to use some space there. Okay, so now I want to talk about something that summarizes the use of these ratios. Let us talk about cycles. Production cycle, operating cycle, cash conversion cycle, financial cycle in the company. So this will be our discussion now. So I will use this space. In fact, I'll use a little more space from here. This way. And let's use this space. Okay, let this be our timeline, T timeline, on which we will mark special moments in time that happen in the company. So the first moment in time that I will highlight here will be this moment. It's the moment when the company buys materials, or we buy materials. So it's a certain moment in time. So this moment in time begins the process of converting raw materials into work in progress when we send them to production. When after production they become finished goods, and then we sell them, and then we get money for it. So this is the moment when we buy materials, and this is the raw materials, okay. The raw materials, they, after a certain time, become work in progress, and after a certain time, they become finished goods, okay. So when they become finished goods, that's the end of production transformation. So all of that together will be called, I'll use a different color. Let's use some production, more like, yeah, like this. So let's say this is our production cycle. So a certain amount of time. Okay, after this production transformation is over, we come up with the next moment in time, which is the moment of we sell finished goods here. This is the moment in time. We sell finished goods. In fact, I'll do like this. We sell our finished goods. And then we wait. So our finished goods become our, hold on. Let me use it. So they become our accounts receivable. So we sell them, now it's accounts receivable. And finally, they become sales. Okay, so accounts receivable. And here's a moment in time where we we get money from sales. Well, we get money for finished goods, from accounts receivable. We get money from finished goods when they pay accounts receivable. Okay? So that's another moment in time. Now, oops, no, that's wrong, but I need, so this is the moment when we get, this one is better. We get our sales, cash sales. So we get our money. So now let's try to look at the broader picture, which we need to understand. There is another moment on this graph which we have not shown, and this is the moment in time when we pay for raw materials. These are raw materials. We buy raw materials, and then there is a time when we pay for it. So this time over here is the time that we wait before we pay for our raw materials. When we buy it, we get accounts payable. Then we wait, and we pay for the raw materials, or accounts payable. So we pay we cover our accounts payable. So here we receive money from accounts receivable, here we pay money for accounts payable. Okay? And that's the moment in time where we pretty much lose our money. No, doesn't look good. Oh. So this is losing money, this is getting the money back. Do you follow me? Yes. So now that gives us an interesting background, the foundation for thinking. Okay, let's see what kind of cycles we can find on this picture. One cycle is the production cycle. This is the transformation of raw materials into work in progress, into finished goods. Okay, so that's one cycle. Now, there is another period of time which we need to understand. It's this period of time. This is the circulation of accounts receivable. Pretty much on average, how much we wait before our accounts receivable will be covered. And now the interesting part is that out of the ratios that we have calculated, we already calculated that period of time. Where is it? Which one? 2.1, 2.2, 2.3, 2.4, 2.5, 2.6. Which ratio will, I can put here where the green is. What ratio should fit here? Accounts receivable turnover. You think? Okay, Evelina thinks it's 2.1. Any other ideas? 2.6 days in accounts payable. Well, but that's not accounts receivable. Okay. Anything else? It's 2.2 days in accounts receivable. So this green question mark is days in accounts receivable. In our case, it equals to 73 days. Okay? So see, on average, it takes about 73 days to convert our finished goods sales into cash sales. Okay? Now, production cycle is also an interesting cycle that we already saw in our ratios. Now, look, raw materials into work in progress, into finished goods, how long it takes to convert raw materials, work in progress, and finished goods is expressed in which ratio? Look at it and tell me. Yes, it's days in inventory, because inventory is raw materials, work in progress, and finished goods. So how many days on average it takes to convert our raw materials into finished goods? It is in 2.4 ratio. So I can write here, these are days in inventory. And it equals to 228 days. I will highlight this too. So we are making progress. So now, another important idea. So there is, which color am I going to use? I'm going to use this color. There is this period of time from the moment we buy raw materials till the moment we get cash sales. And this period of time is called operating cycle. So this is the time we need to convert our inventories and convert our accounts receivables into cash. So how can we calculate the operating cycle? We should take, so operating cycle equals, look at the graph, at the picture. What should I take? Days in inventory, DI, and add days in accounts receivable. Days in accounts receivable. So in our case, it's going to be 228 plus 73 equals, now I need your help, 301?
Yes.
301 days. Okay? Is that reasonable? Yes. 301 days. So this period tells us that on average for the company to kind of go through the whole cycle of buying raw materials, going through production, selling, waiting for the money to come, it takes 301 days. This is operating cycle. This is the important indicator. So production cycle is an interesting indicator. Operating cycle is an important indicator. Now let's look at what is called a cash cycle. Cash cycle. The idea of cash cycle is this. How long does it take before, from the moment we lose money till the moment we get money? So from the moment we pay till the moment we receive. From accounts payable to accounts receivable. So in this case, now let's look at it and see what do we need to know in order to calculate our cash cycle. What else is missing here? So this is our question mark, but in order to calculate the cash cycle, what do we need to know?
We need to know our days in.
Yes, days in accounts payable. So we need to know the DAP, days in accounts payable. So, but do we know it? It looks like we do. because days in accounts payable is 2.6 ratio. So it's 137 days. 137, and I highlight this. So now we have information enough to calculate the cash cycle. So the cash conversion cycles, the CCC, well, let me do it with the CCC, cash conversion cycle, is, to calculate that, we should take the operating cycle and subtract the days in accounts payable. Because we have the whole period of operating cycle and we subtract whatever time we have in days in accounts payable. So 3.1 minus 137 equals how much?
164.
164 days. Oh, that's another perfect number we need to know. Okay? 164 days. So these days are they are very common sense, logical, and if you guys understand this, that's good. It's really good if you follow me on this, because think about it. Common sense, the common sense should tell you, if you're a financial manager with a firm, you would naturally think, how can I make sure that my company spends without money as less time as possible? So I don't want to be without money. I want to always have money. So what should I do in order to have money at hand? Well, the first thing you got to do is make as long as possible days in accounts payable, the DAP, because the money leaves you only when you pay for your raw materials. So if you make it longer, so you stay longer with money. On the other hand, you think, okay, or I should quickly collect money from my accounts payable, no, accounts receivable, the DAR, the green arrow. So if I can shorten this time, if I shorten the DAR, this line will go this way. If I make the DAP longer, it will go this way. So technically, this is how I manage my cash cycle. So I do one longer, do the other one shorter. Also, if my production cycle is getting shorter, if your production cycle goes shorter, it means that your whole operating cycle goes shorter. The DI, days in inventory, изменяется? Нет, if we can make it shorter, например, смотрите, чем меньше у нас запасов, the less raw materials we have, the less finished goods we have. In terms of less, it means you faster sell it or you faster send it to production. Your production cycle will shrink, уменьшаться. So if you shrink the production cycle, if you shrink the accounts receivable cycle, so everything shrinks, but accounts payable gets longer, so you technically can get to the point where they will meet. In other words, you receive money from your customers, and then you pay for your raw materials. So that's perfect situation. Think, make it zero. So just this picture tells you how you can manage your assets. So that's why it's asset management ratios. Because you can use this information to manage your assets. If you manage them well, your cash conversion cycle shrinks, your accounts receivable turnover and days in accounts receivable shrink. Maybe you manage to prolong the days in accounts payable, and so you work it out in the best possible way. You follow me? Okay. So that's the idea about asset management ratios. I will add one more formula here. Look, for the cash conversion cycle, I said that it's our operating cycle minus the days in accounts payable. I can also write it down this way, that cash conversion cycle can be also calculated as days in inventory plus days in accounts receivable minus days in accounts payable. So you don't have to use the operating cycle terminology. You can use only these ratios. So these ratios in our list are, you take 2 days in inventory, days at 2.4 plus 2.2 minus 2.6. So all these ratios are already calculated. You just use them for the calculation. So in this case, the same, you can take 228 plus 73 minus 137. All these ratios, they will give you 164 as well. Okay. So this is the most common calculation ratio that is used. And this is the calculation ratio for operating cycle. So operating cycle is something that you need to understand how it's calculated. And cash conversion cycle is something that you need to understand how it is calculated. So this graph, this timeline should help you understand it and use it. Okay, any questions so far? No questions? Well, thank you for being here. Have a good evening. I'll give you a home assignment.